Are you guys ready to talk about one of the most fun and expansive placements that you could have? Hola my beautiful lotus flowers, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're into nerding out on everything astrology, spirituality, and self-transformation, this is the community for you. Today is all about having Venus and Sagittarius, and what this means is that at the exact moment you were born, the exact minute you were born, Venus, the planet, was moving through the sign of Sagittarius. And if you're not quite sure what the general energy of Venus entails in astrology, then I will be leaving a pre-recorded clip before the video actually starts, so that way you can get a better idea of what Venus means and you can understand your placement even better. And then after that, we will talk about the general traits of this placement, and we will finish the video with a couple tips of empowerment for any of you who do have this placement or know somebody who does. That way you know how you can use it positively in your life rather than just knowing your traits and calling it a day. So be sure you stay tuned for that. Now let's start the video with an introduction to the planet Venus in astrology. Venus is the planet of love, creativity / creation, and the material world. Venus actually rules over two zodiac signs, both Taurus and Libra. Taurus is an earth sign and Libra is an air sign. Venus's location on your birth chart will give you more specific insight into what you're drawn towards in the world and what's also drawn towards you. You can think of, quote, what I like and what I attract to remember what Venus means in your chart. In the words of Christopher Renstrom from the Cosmic Calendar, Venus can be summarized into being your astrological perfume. I thought that was an amazing little analogy. Venus is heavily associated with fertility, but this doesn't simply refer to biological fertility. This actually refers more to what we create in the physical world, from art to wealth, etc. So think manifestation. Venus's placement will say a lot about what you might create in this life, what's important to you to create, and what you're aesthetically and romantically drawn to. But remember, pay attention to whether Venus was retrograde at the time you were born, and the way that you can identify that is when you pull up your natal chart, it should show you a little RX, which is the retrograde symbol, next to whichever planets were retrograde in your chart at the time you were born. And I would try a few different sites just to make sure that you don't see that little retrograde, because not every site provides it. But this basically means that a lot of the traits that I talk about, it may manifest as the opposite for you when it's retrograde. This isn't always true. Retrograde can channel itself as many different things, but typically, say your Venus placement is supposed to make you really value someone who's nurturing and caring. Well, if it was retrograde, then maybe you struggle to find somebody who's nurturing and caring, and you end up in a lot of bad relationships. So it could channel itself many different ways, but it is something to pay attention to in your chart and do research on as well. Now, for the general traits of somebody who has Venus in Sagittarius. First, it's important to remember that Sagittarius is the mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter, symbolized by the archer. Number one, having this placement likely means that this person places high value on their own independence and freedom to constantly expand their horizons in every area of their life. Jupiter, being known as the planet of luck, expansion, and higher learning, combining with Venus, planet of love and what we value, creates someone who needs to lead a more free-spirited life full of new adventures. Oftentimes, this probably makes them a really fun person to be with, whether you're friends with them, partners, coworkers, family, whatever, because they just have a fun outlook on life. They just want to enjoy it. They want to live for the experiences. They don't want to get caught up in the little, oh, this went wrong and that went wrong. They just want to enjoy every moment. They want to do new things. They want to just enjoy everything and everyone. But if you're somebody who's pessimistic, I'm telling you now, you're probably not going to mesh very well with someone who has this placement. With that being said, again, this is definitely 100% someone who values experiences that they have, such as traveling to places, learning things, creating meaningful bonds with people. They value those experiences way more than material things, like having designer clothes, designer this, designer that. Whatever it may be, they value experience over material a lot more. And this is one of the reasons that for the bonds that they do create, because Venus says a lot about the type of people that will attract, the type of people we'll hang with, that will become romantically involved with, etc. So for a Venus in Sagittarius specifically, this means that they're probably going to enjoy being around people that they feel they can really learn from. They feel like their soul becomes nourished when they're around these people. They have something to learn from them. They have somebody who introduces them to new things. Maybe they're the type of person to have friends from all different walks of life, all different cultures, places, because they just love being able to bridge those unknown gaps between what they know and what other people's experiences. They live for this type of thing. Number 2, they often have a more easygoing, go with the flow mindset, especially in terms of their finances. Again, since we're dealing with the material planet of Venus here, the mutable trait of Sagittarians, which if you're not sure, mutable tends to mean adaptable and good with change. The mutable trait of Sagittarians is likely to show up in how they perceive their financial matters, whereas some other Venus signs might place strict plans on themselves or have specific financial goals in mind and set a plan to get there. Sagittarius Venuses are probably more open to seeing where the wind carries them as opposed to maintaining a strict or rigid routine/plan. Now, this isn't to say, of course, that they don't have ambition or they don't have any huge dreams or goals or whatever, but they're just much more open and adaptable to where the wind carries them as they achieve these goals. For this person, it's often okay to change a path or to change the plan if they even had a plan. And it's more so when people tell you that you really need to enjoy the journey to your destination more than just worrying about getting to the destination. This applies very heavily. This mindset applies very heavily to someone with Venus and Sagittarius. They want to enjoy the steps of the journey, even if the journey takes unexpected turns, unexpected ups and downs. They're much more adaptable to these changes, and they actually welcome them to an extent. Although, if you have this placement and you're thinking, what is she talking about? I don't like going through hard obstacles and stuff. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to, but you probably are much more adaptable and quick to get back on your feet and move forward. Number 3, they likely crave some form of activity on a regular basis. Although Sagittarius and Jupiter have a lot to do with the mental process, since this is often a very philosophical energy, Venus deals with more of the physical aspects of our existence, meaning that regular physical activity or movement of some sort can be quite important for this placement, especially being the fire sign. And most of the fire signs have a need for some type of movement. They often have a lot of internal energy that needs to be transmuted physically in some form. It's very likely you'll see this type of person have a job in some type of entertainment, being some type of athlete, whatever it is, because they naturally have this big energy that they want to share with the world, or they need to express physically in some way. But even if this isn't channeled into the career, I'm just saying that oftentimes it might be, especially because we're dealing with Venus. But even if it isn't being channeled into their career, it is important for this person to have some type of physical outlet for the energy that they have, for this constant internal movement that they have. Anytime that you have the energetic mutable placements present, such as Gemini and Sagittarius, there can be a tendency to feel more anxious and feel more restless. And this is another reason that physical activity is very important. If you're enjoying this video so far, please be sure you don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and leave a comment down below if you're a Venus in Sagittarius or what your Venus placement is, or if you know somebody who is Venus in Sagittarius. And be sure that you don't forget to check out my Patreon link down below. If you like more in-depth astrological readings from moi, then those are over on my Patreon and they come out every week. Number 4, despite the seemingly sporadic energy of this placement, they probably have a massive vision for their ideal life and they plan to achieve it all at all costs. You may not know this, but Sagittarius is actually a very positively charged sign for Venus to be in, giving this person the physical energy and the general optimism to not only dream big, but to also go after that dream naturally. We can tie this into the energy of the archer, who always has his or her eyes on the target, near or far, and plans to hit the bullseye every time. It's because of this empowering, expansive combination of energy between Jupiter and Venus that this person has a supercharged ability to bring their dreams into reality. We tend to see a similarity here between the Leo placements and Sagittarius placements, and I actually mentioned this in my Mercury and Sagittarius video as well. But a Venus in Leo is similar to a Venus in Sagittarius in this way, actually, because Venus and Leos they almost can't accept anything but having everything they feel they deserve. They know they deserve a lot. They tend to have a high sense of self-worth, and they tend to want to lead very materially luxurious lives. And because they feel that they deserve that, and it tends to be very natural for them to actually manifest this into reality because of that Venus-Sun relationship, because Sun is the ruler of Leo, that just naturally expands and brings that manifestation of that dream to their lives. And we see this with Venus and Sagittarius as well, but especially because we have Jupiter, a planet that is known for dreaming and for moving to bigger things and expanding. And we have that energy present with Venus, the planet that literally governs material matters in our world and bringing those to life, bringing things to fruition. These energies intertwine so beautifully. And you have the archer on top of that. You have somebody who has the mentality of the archer when it comes to their career, when it comes to their relationships. They're gonna effortlessly dive after what they want. They're going to go after the bullseye no matter what. And it's a beautiful combination of energy here. And this person really, if they keep their mindset in the correct place, if they struggle with their mindset despite having this placement, if they can work on that, then this is a beautiful placement for manifestation. And it's also a great placement for becoming an inspirational figure to others as well, because of this type of energy being present. Now let's talk about some empowering tips for somebody who has Venus in Sagittarius. Number 1, similar to Mercury and Sagittarius, this placement needs to be careful of overshadowing their reality with their extremely large dreams. Of course, I 100% believe that anybody in general, but anybody with this placement can achieve those grand visions that they feel they deserve and they want in their lives. But they can fall short if they fail to recognize the realistic and practical steps they need to take along the way in order to get there. Again, very similar to Venus and Leo energy. In the Venus and Leo video, I mentioned something about this person potentially holding themselves back because they automatically feel that they just deserve this luxurious lifestyle. They deserve all of their dreams and everything. And because they just feel that they deserve it, they don't actually go and work for it, because they just have this like egotistic complex that can develop where they're like, I don't get why they would do that. Like, I deserve this, I deserve that, but you're not even putting in the work for it. So when it comes to Venus and Sagittarius, the same type of energy is present, but it takes form a bit differently. It's more so that this person has a vivid visualization of what they want and what they feel they deserve in their life and what they're going to go after. They have a vivid image of the bullseye that they're going after. They have the natural drive, mindset, optimism, all of it. They have all the components that they need to bring it into reality. But because they have such a clear vision, sometimes this can cause them to think way too hastily about that vision. They can think, I should have it by now. I should have it by now. I should have it by now. When realistically, you have years to go to make that happen, or it takes a long time. It takes patience. You know, slow and steady wins the race can kind of be a bit of a negative sounding phrase to someone with Venus and Sagittarius. Perhaps sitting down once a month or on a weekly basis, you know, whatever works for you. This is just a suggestion of mine. There's so many things you could do, but perhaps sitting down with yourself on a regular basis, monthly, weekly, whatever works for you, and breaking your vision down into smaller steps. You know, start with maybe the top 3 things you really want, and then breaking them down into smaller little steps, because those little steps that you have to take daily are what build the bigger thing that you visualize. Even if you can't see how those small steps add up, trust that they do and start planning. Slow down and start planning that, because if you don't, if you think, you know, if you get impatient and you think like, I should have it now, I should have it now, I should have it now, then most likely you're holding yourself back by thinking that way. Number 2, they have to be able to stick out certain situations that they may be too impulsive about leaving. Many of the mutable signs can have this type of trait present. So if you have Venus in Sagittarius, you're not alone. All the mutable signs kind of have a complex about needing new scenery, needing a new change in their lives to feel happy, or they can be a bit too impulsive about certain decisions just because of one little thing. This is definitely true for Venus and Sagittarius as well, because this is a placement that heavily values new adventures and new things. Sometimes they may not realize that they're being just too quick to give up on something without really waiting it out and sticking to it and committing to it. There can definitely be a commitment issue when it comes to this placement, and if you have this placement or you have encountered somebody who does, then you may have noticed this. And because we're dealing with Venus, a lot of times this can become true in their relationships and in their career. Those are the main things that they'll have a hard time committing to most of the time. And another problem here is because they can start to feel restricted. If they start to feel restricted in any way because they've been in a certain position too long, they've been with a certain person too long, or whatever's happening, they can be quick to dive out of it because they do not like to feel restricted. Jupiter is this massive planet, and then their symbol is the archer, and they're the fire sign. They're very go-getter. They want to be out there. They want to be expanding and expanding and expanding like Jupiter. And it may cause them to be too quick about being like, nope, I'm not doing this, goodbye. Or there's something better, goodbye. And even though this can be a good thing, because maybe you know what you deserve, you know, maybe Venus and Sagittarians tend to know what they deserve, and that's a great thing. But on one hand, are you being too impulsive? And that is important to ask yourself that question, because you can put yourself in a lot of bad situations if you are. My advice would be to pick up regular practices that help ease this impulsivity and this anxiousness that you may feel about your relationship, about your goals, whatever it may be. And physical activity will really be the best thing. Like I mentioned earlier, physical activity is probably a natural desire, a natural necessity in this person's life. So picking up any type of physical activity that can help release some of that anxiousness, or even picking up soul nourishing practices such as yoga and meditation. These can be really good practices for Venus and Sagittarius, but especially yoga, because it's kind of like meditation but with movement. And so that way you are engaging the body, you are still moving, you're still allowing your active desire to be fulfilled, but while also creating that slow connection to yourself that you need to slow down and control those impulses that may be holding you back. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure that you don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, and leave a comment down below if you are Venus and Sagittarius, know somebody who is, or just leave what your Venus sign is below in general. And be sure to check out my Patreon. Like I mentioned, I have weekly in-depth astrology readings on over there. I don't know what I'm saying. And head over to the LaBlue Lotus Facebook community, where we talk more about using astrology and spirituality for self-transformation. But if that's not enough, you can head over to my Instagram at Marisa LaBlue for a more personal side of my journey, and I post a lot of updates over there as well, so you can keep up with me. And watch these videos if you haven't already, because they will help you so much more on your astrological and spiritual journey. Until I see you next time, thank you so much for being here. Adios.